It was a cool, quiet morning just a few days before the 2025 presidential inauguration. Melania Trump, the former First Lady, had just finished her stylist appointment in preparation for the grand event. She stepped out of the building, her heels clicking softly on the pavement as she made her way to the hotel parking lot. The excitement for the upcoming event was in the air, but there was something unusual about the scene in front of her that would soon capture her heart. As she looked around, her gaze fell upon something unexpected. A young boy, no older than 10 or 11, lying on the ground in a small, shaded corner of the parking lot. He was curled up on a thin, worn-out blanket, trying to sleep beneath a makeshift umbrella. His face looked tired and pale, and the soft rise and fall of his chest suggested that he was deep in sleep. The boy appeared to be alone in the vast, busy lot, with no one around to keep an eye on him. At first, Melania was taken aback. How could a child end up in a situation like this, especially on such an important day? Her mind raced as she wondered what had brought him here, why he was so far from home, and why no one had noticed him before. The sight of the young boy made her heart ache. In that moment, all of the glamour and excitement of the upcoming inauguration seemed so distant and unimportant compared to the urgency of the child's situation. Melania's natural instincts took over. She walked toward the boy with a gentle and quiet step, making sure she didn't startle him as she approached. The parking lot, usually bustling with activity, was now eerily silent, allowing Melania to focus entirely on the boy in front of her. She crouched down beside him, her eyes filled with concern. The cool breeze rustled her hair, but she barely noticed it, her attention solely on the child before her. Gently, Melania reached out and placed a soft hand on the boy's shoulder. She shook him carefully, speaking to him in a calm and soothing voice, hoping to wake him without frightening him. The boy stirred slowly, blinking his eyes open as he tried to adjust to the light. His confusion was clear, but as his eyes met hers, there was a spark of recognition. She smiled softly, assuring him that he was safe. "Hey there," Melania said in a gentle tone. "Are you okay?" The boy sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. He looked disoriented, but nodded in response. He explained that he had gotten separated from his family during the inauguration events. They had been moving through the crowds, but in the chaos, he had lost track of them. Melania listened intently, feeling a deep sense of empathy for him. The boy, though young, seemed remarkably calm about the whole ordeal, but Melania could tell he was scared. He wasn't sure what to do or where to go next. As she sat next to him, her mind raced, thinking about how to help him. Melania knew that there were people nearby who could assist them, but the priority was making the boy feel safe and comfortable in that moment. She asked if he was hungry or thirsty, and his small nod was all the answer she needed. The boy had gone through something difficult, but in that moment, he needed kindness and care more than anything else. Melania stayed with him, offering words of comfort, waiting for the right help to arrive. She knew that every second mattered, and she wasn't going to leave this young boy alone, especially not on a day like this. The minutes felt like hours as Melania sat beside the boy, keeping him company in the quiet parking lot. She could sense the growing discomfort in him, despite his attempts to remain calm. His small hands fidgeted with the corner of the blanket, and his eyes darted around as though hoping to see his parents approaching. But there was nothing, just the endless stretch of pavement and the distant hum of the busy streets. It was clear that he felt lost, unsure of what to do next. Melania knew the importance of staying calm in situations like this. She gently spoke to the boy, trying to ease his anxiety. "Don't worry, everything will be okay. We're going to get you some help," she reassured him. Her voice was soft and full of warmth, hoping to provide him with a sense of security. She could feel the weight of the moment, the responsibility to make sure he felt safe, cared for, and heard. She wasn't just someone passing by. In that moment, she was the person who could make all the difference. The boy looked at her with a mix of uncertainty and gratitude. He had been so scared before, but now, There was a flicker of hope in his eyes. It wasn't just the words that comforted him. It was the simple act of someone caring enough to notice his plight. So many people had passed by without a second glance, but Melania had stopped, and that small gesture meant the world to him. As they sat there, Melania noticed the boy's clothes were worn, a little too large for his small frame, and there was a faint trace of dirt on his face. It seemed like he had been through a lot more than just the confusion of being separated from his family. He was alone in a world that felt vast and overwhelming, and the chaos of the inauguration had only added to his sense of fear. In an effort to make him feel more comfortable, Melania took a deep breath and decided to share a little bit of her own story with him. She told him how, even when things seemed tough or confusing, there was always a way to find help. "When I was young," she said gently, "I sometimes felt lost too. But I learned that there's always someone out there who cares." The boy's eyes widened slightly as he listened, as if the reassurance from someone he didn't know gave him the courage to believe that he wasn't truly alone in this world. At that moment, a hotel employee walked by, and Melania waved them over. The staff member, a young woman, noticed the boy immediately and hurried over with concern in her eyes. Melania explained the situation, and the woman quickly pulled out her phone, contacting the security team to start looking for the boy's parents. She promised that they would find his family soon, but for now, they would take care of him and make sure he was comfortable. Melania could see the relief on the boy's face as the hotel staff began to take charge. He stood up and dusted off his clothes, his small frame looking more relaxed now that help had arrived. The once fearful expression on his face had softened, replaced by a glimmer of hope. He wasn't lost anymore. He wasn't alone. As they waited for further assistance, Melania stayed close, watching over the boy with a caring eye. She could tell he was still a little shaken, but she was confident that everything would be okay. The boy had been brave, but now it was her turn to ensure he would be safe and reunited with his family. This wasn't just a moment of chance. It was a reminder of the importance of kindness and compassion, especially in times of uncertainty. As they sat in the parking lot, Melania could see the boy starting to relax a little more. The tension that had gripped him earlier was starting to ease, replaced by a quiet hope. His eyes, which had been wide with confusion and fear, now looked more focused. It was as if the knowledge that someone was there for him made all the difference in the world. Melania could sense the shift, and it made her heart swell with a quiet pride. She had done something simple, yet powerful. She had shown kindness when it was needed most. The hotel employee, who had promised to help, walked off to make some calls and get things moving. For a moment, it was just Melania and the boy again. The world around them seemed to slow down, with only the distant sounds of the inauguration crowd and the occasional car passing by in the background. Everything else felt unimportant. In that moment, all that mattered was ensuring this young boy would be okay. Melania glanced at the boy as he stood there, his eyes still searching the parking lot for any sign of his family. He looked so small in the vast space, as though the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders. She couldn't imagine what it must have felt like to be separated from your family in the middle of such a busy event, especially at such a young age. It was a moment of vulnerability, one that many people might overlook, but not Melania. She stayed close, offering him a steady presence, her gaze filled with compassion. "Do you want to tell me a little about your family?" she asked gently, hoping to distract him and bring a little comfort. The boy hesitated at first, unsure whether he should talk to someone he had just met. But Melania's warm smile and kind eyes seemed to ease his doubts. Slowly, he began to speak. He told her about his parents, how they had come to the inauguration to see history being made, and how much he had been looking forward to the day. But when the crowds became too thick and the noise too loud, he had gotten separated from them. His voice quivered as he spoke, but there was a strength behind his words. Melania could see it. This boy had been through a lot, but he was trying to be brave. As the conversation continued, she learned more about his family. His mother had always been there to reassure him, to help him navigate tough situations. His father, a man with a hearty laugh and a deep love for adventure, had taught him to be curious about the world around him. It was clear that the boy came from a loving family, and he missed them dearly. Each story he shared seemed to remind him of the comfort and security he had once known. Melania listened carefully, never interrupting, just letting him talk and express himself. Just as they were speaking, the hotel employee returned, her face lit with good news. She had contacted the security team, and they had successfully located the boy's parents nearby. They were being brought to the hotel, and they would be reunited in just a few moments. The boy's face lit up at the news, his eyes sparkling with excitement and relief. "Thank you," he said quietly, looking up at Melania with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "I was so scared, but now I know everything's going to be okay." Melania smiled warmly, her heart swelling with happiness for the boy. "You're welcome," she said softly. "You're going to be with your family again, and everything will be all right." As they waited for his parents to arrive, the boy's nervous energy was replaced by an eager anticipation. He couldn't sit still, bouncing from foot to foot, eyes scanning every car that drove by. Melania watched him with a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had done her part, but it was the boy's strength and resilience that had truly shone through in this moment. Despite everything that had happened, he had remained calm, and now he was about to be safely back in the arms of his parents. The feeling of relief that washed over them both was palpable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a car pulled into the lot. A man and a woman rushed out of the vehicle, their eyes scanning the area. When they saw their son, they ran toward him, their faces lighting up with overwhelming joy. The boy's face was filled with pure happiness, and he sprinted toward them, calling out to them in excitement. Melania stood off to the side, watching the reunion unfold before her. As the family embraced, their gratitude was evident. They thanked Melania over and over, but she only nodded, her heart full of warmth. It had been a simple act, one that anyone might have done, but it had meant everything to that boy and his family. The reunion between the boy and his parents was everything they had all hoped for. The moment the boy was back in his mother's arms, the tears that had been welling up in his eyes finally spilled over. His mother held him tightly, as if she never wanted to let go again. The father, equally relieved, patted his son's back with a gentle yet firm hand, as though he could protect him forever now that he was safe. The boy was laughing, his earlier fear and worry replaced by a deep sense of comfort. Melania stood nearby, watching the scene unfold with a quiet sense of contentment. She knew the feeling of relief that came with being reunited with loved ones. She had seen it many times in her life, especially during the years when she worked alongside her husband, navigating a life filled with attention and constant public scrutiny. But this was different. It wasn't about politics or fame. It was about human connection and the deep bonds that hold families together. Melania's heart swelled with a feeling of fulfillment, knowing she had played a part in bringing that family back together. The parents, still holding their son, turned to Melania, their faces full of gratitude. The mother, with a soft smile, stepped forward first. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means to us. You found him when we didn't know where he was, and you stayed with him. We'll never forget your kindness." The father nodded in agreement, his eyes full of admiration. "You're a real lifesaver," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for taking care of him when we couldn't." Melania smiled gently, her heart touched by their words. "I'm just glad he's safe. That's all that matters." She didn't need any praise. Seeing the boy happy, back in the arms of his parents, was enough. The boy, still beaming, looked up at Melania with a shy but grateful expression. "Thank you for helping me," he said softly. "I was so scared, but now I feel better." Melania crouched down to his level, her eyes soft and full of warmth. "You were very brave," she told him. "I'm proud of you for staying strong. And remember, There's always someone willing to help, even when things seem tough. The boy nodded, the words sinking in. He seemed to understand the importance of kindness and strength, even in the face of uncertainty. He would carry this moment with him, a reminder that there were people who cared, even when things felt uncertain. As the family prepared to leave, the parents thanked Melania once more before they headed toward their car. Melania watched them go, the boy now safely tucked between his parents, their hands clasped together as they walked. It was a beautiful sight, a reminder that no matter what happens in the world, love and care could overcome fear and confusion. That small act of kindness had made a world of difference in the boy's life, and it had created a lasting bond between them all. For Melania, the moment stayed with her long after the family had left. She knew that life was full of challenges, but it was the moments like these, the simple, genuine acts of kindness, that truly mattered. It wasn't about grand gestures or public recognition. It was about making a real impact in someone's life when they needed it most. She had witnessed firsthand the power of compassion, and it left her feeling fulfilled in a way she hadn't expected. She would carry this experience with her, knowing that, in the end, it was the small things that made the biggest difference. As the day continued to unfold, Melania couldn't help but reflect on the profound effect of that simple act. The world often moved quickly, with so many distractions and noise, but in that moment, time had slowed down. The boy and his family had reminded her of the importance of slowing down to help someone in need, of offering kindness without expecting anything in return. And as she returned to her busy schedule, she carried with her the quiet but powerful lesson that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change lives. As the day wore on, and the excitement of the inauguration continued, Melania found herself reflecting on the events that had unfolded earlier. She had seen the boy reunited with his parents, and the image of that joyful moment stayed with her, tugging at her heart. In the midst of a busy day, filled with speeches, celebrations, and endless crowds, she had witnessed something far more meaningful than any political victory or public recognition. She had seen the power of simple, human kindness. Melania couldn't help but think about how easy it would have been for anyone to walk by, to ignore the boy lying alone in the parking lot, caught up in the frenzy of the day. But she hadn't done that. She had stopped. She had taken the time to ensure that the boy felt safe and cared for, even when it seemed like the world around them was moving too fast to notice. The thought that one small action could make such a big difference lingered with her throughout the rest of the day. Even as the inauguration festivities continued, Melania couldn't shake the memory of the boy's face, the relief in his eyes when he was finally reunited with his parents. It reminded her that, no matter how busy or overwhelming life became, it was always important to remember the power of kindness. It was a lesson that sometimes we get so caught up in our own lives and responsibilities that we forget the impact we can have on others simply by being there when they need us most. Later that evening, as the lights of the city glittered and the celebrations reached their peak, Melania took a moment of quiet for herself. She thought about her own family and how they had always been there for one another. The bond she shared with her loved ones was something precious, something that no amount of fame or fortune could replace. And it was clear to her that the boy she had helped earlier that day was no different. His parents had been worried and frightened, but in the end, they had found each other again because of the love and care that held them together. In that brief, unexpected moment, Melania had been reminded of what really mattered in life: the connections we share with others, the love we offer, and the support we give when it's needed most. The boy's family had been lucky that she was there, but she also knew that there were countless others who might need help, just as she had needed help at different times in her life. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes all we could do was offer a hand to those who needed it. As Melania sat quietly, thinking back on the day's events, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She didn't need the world to know what she had done. The boy's family didn't need to thank her again. The reward for helping wasn't in the recognition or praise. It was in the simple knowledge that she had made a difference. That was enough. The joy in the boy's face, the grateful smiles of his parents, and the feeling that everything was right in their world again. That was the true reward. The experience also reminded her of how fortunate she was to have the support of her own family. She thought of her son, her husband, and the close friends who had always stood by her. The love and trust they shared made her feel grounded, no matter what challenges life threw her way. And now, the act of helping that boy and witnessing the joy of his family made her even more determined to continue showing kindness wherever she could. As the day ended and the lights of the city flickered in the distance, Melania felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons she had learned. She had been reminded of the power of compassion and how it could create ripples of change in the world. That night, as she prepared for the next chapter of her life, she carried with her the realization that no act of kindness was ever too small. Whether it was a stranger in need or a loved one going through a tough time, the impact of showing up, of offering a helping hand, was immeasurable. And that was something she would never forget. The days after the inauguration were a whirlwind of activity. As Melania moved forward with her schedule, the excitement of the event still hung in the air. And yet, there was a quiet reflection that lingered in her mind. Despite the bustling schedule of meetings, events, and public appearances, the memory of the young boy and his family stayed with her, as though it had imprinted itself on her heart. In the midst of all the busy moments, Melania found herself thinking about the boy's family and the kindness they had shared. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the elaborate moments. It was the small, meaningful acts that had truly made a difference. She remembered the way his mother had held him tightly when they were reunited, the tears in her eyes, and the father's relief as he saw his son's smile return. The boy, who had been so lost and alone only hours before, was now safe and back where he belonged, surrounded by the love and care of his parents. In the quiet moments between meetings, Melania found herself reflecting on the power of human connection. She realized that the bond between a parent and child was something that transcended all else, and that sometimes the greatest gift we could give to someone was simply showing them that they weren't alone in their struggles. In a world that often felt fast-paced and disconnected, Melania recognized the value of slowing down to truly see and care for others. As the days passed, Melania became more aware of the countless small acts of kindness happening all around her. She noticed the way people would pause to help others in need, offer a warm smile, or lend a hand without expecting anything in return. It was these quiet acts that built the foundation of communities and families. The thought made her smile. In a world that often felt chaotic and full of noise, it was the simple, genuine moments of connection that had the most lasting impact. One afternoon, as Melania was preparing for a new set of events, she received a letter. The envelope was simple, and the handwriting on it was neat and familiar. It was from the boy's parents. Inside, they expressed their deepest gratitude for her help and care. They thanked her for staying with their son, for showing him kindness when he needed it most, and for making sure he was safe until they could be reunited. The letter went on to share how the experience had brought them closer together as a family, reminding them of the importance of looking out for one another and showing compassion in a world that could sometimes be cold and uncaring. Reading the letter, Melania felt her heart warm. It wasn't just a thank you. It was a reminder that the world still had goodness in it, that people still cared about one another, even in the midst of chaos. It was a message that resonated deeply with her. She had always believed in the power of kindness, but seeing the real impact it had made on that family made her believe in it even more. The letter was a reminder that no matter how busy life got or how many challenges arose, taking the time to care for others was always worth it. It didn't matter if the world knew or if anyone ever noticed. What mattered was that, in a moment when someone needed help, she had been there to make a difference. With that in mind, Melania felt a renewed sense of purpose. She began thinking of new ways she could continue helping others, finding small ways to show kindness, whether it was to a stranger or someone close to her. She knew that it didn't have to be a grand gesture to matter. It was the little things, the moments of empathy, of reaching out, of being present, that made the most lasting impact. As the letter was tucked safely away, Melania found herself once again feeling grateful for the lessons she had learned. The boy's story, his reunion with his family, and the kindness she had been able to offer were reminders of the beauty of simple human connection. And with each passing day, she hoped to continue living in a way that honored those lessons, by showing compassion, by being present, and by offering a hand whenever someone was in need. It was these small acts, she knew, that had the power to create a ripple effect and change the world for the better, one kind moment at a time. As the weeks passed, Melania couldn't help but think back to the day she helped the boy. It had started as a simple act of kindness, just one moment in time, but it had lingered in her mind long after the boy and his parents had left. Every now and then, she'd find herself remembering the boy's wide eyes, filled with uncertainty, and the moment when his parents had rushed to him, relief and joy written all over their faces. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest of actions could have the greatest impact. One afternoon, while Melania was attending a charity event, she found herself surrounded by people, all of them talking and laughing, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that quiet parking lot where she had met the boy. She realized that moments like these weren't just fleeting. They were opportunities to create real change, no matter how small. She thought about how many people, every day, were in situations where they felt alone, where they needed someone to stop and see them, to offer a hand. It made her more determined to make a difference, even if it was in small ways. It wasn't about seeking recognition. It was about the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had done something meaningful. Later, as Melania sat down to reflect on her work and her role in the public eye, she thought about the example she wanted to set for others. She had always believed in the power of kindness, but now, more than ever, she felt the responsibility to act on that belief. She wanted to inspire others to do the same, to show that anyone could make a difference, regardless of their position or status. It wasn't about grand gestures or fame. It was about the everyday acts of kindness that could bring people together and create a sense of belonging. And in a world where so much often seemed divided, Melania was more convinced than ever that kindness had the power to heal, to connect, and to change lives. She thought about the lessons she had learned from that day, lessons about compassion, about the importance of taking the time to truly see others. The boy had been lost, both physically and emotionally, but in that moment, she had been able to offer him something that made all the difference: her time, her attention, and her care. In return, she had received something precious, a reminder of the beauty of human connection, of how simply being there for someone could make them feel seen, valued, and loved. The boy's parents had sent a thank you card shortly after their reunion, expressing their deep gratitude for the help she had provided. Their words had meant a great deal to her, but more than that, they had reminded her of the power of kindness in a way that no applause or praise ever could. It wasn't about the recognition. It was about the impact that small acts of compassion could have on someone's life. That was what mattered. As time went on, Melania found herself seeking out more opportunities to help others. She knew that there was always someone in need, whether it was a friend, a stranger, or a community. It didn't always have to be a grand event. Sometimes it was simply about showing up for someone, letting them know that they mattered. That was the legacy she wanted to leave, one of kindness, of reaching out when it was needed, and of using her platform to encourage others to do the same. In the quieter moments of her life, Melania reflected on how small, seemingly insignificant acts could create ripples of change. She thought about how a simple smile, the helping hand, or a few words of encouragement could be just what someone needed to get through a difficult time. It was a reminder that no act of kindness, no matter how small, was ever wasted. And so, as the days and weeks continued to unfold, Melania kept that lesson close to her heart. She didn't need the world to recognize her actions, because she knew the impact she had made, and that was enough. She was determined to keep living a life that reflected those values, always striving to make the world a little better, one small act of kindness at a time. As time passed, Melania's life continued to unfold in ways she hadn't expected. Her days were filled with various events, meetings, and projects, but the lesson she had learned from helping the boy remained a guiding force in her life. It wasn't just a fleeting moment. It had become a part of her. She realized that the impact of a small act of kindness could stretch far beyond what anyone could imagine, and that understanding became central to the way she approached every part of her day. One afternoon, while on a trip to a local community center for a charity event, Melania had a chance encounter that made her reflect again on how everything was connected. She met a woman who had been volunteering at the center for years. The woman was helping to distribute food to families in need, and she spoke with such passion about the work she did, helping others in their time of struggle. The woman shared how, for her, the most rewarding part of volunteering wasn't the thank yous or the recognition, but the knowledge that she had made someone's day a little brighter. It was exactly what Melania had felt when helping the boy. Sometimes, the smallest efforts could have a profound effect, and they didn't need to be acknowledged by anyone to matter. Melania couldn't help but be inspired by the woman's words. She had always known that kindness was important, but hearing this volunteer speak so passionately reminded her that everyone, no matter their background or their role in society, could make a difference. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about showing up for others when they needed it most. The woman's dedication made Melania think about how much more she could do to help and encourage others, how much further her efforts could reach if she continued to embrace the power of simple acts of compassion. As she continued to attend different events and support causes close to her heart, Melania began to feel a shift in how she approached her public life. She no longer sought attention for her kindness or efforts. Instead, she focused on the impact her actions had on others, especially in the quieter moments, away from the spotlight. Whether it was making a small donation to a local charity, spending time with children at a shelter, or even just lending an ear to someone who needed to talk, Melania felt a growing sense of purpose. These acts weren't about recognition. They were about creating a ripple effect of kindness, one that would spread beyond her own immediate circles. One evening, as she sat in her office reflecting on her journey, Melania thought back to the boy in the parking lot. His scared face had been the start of her new perspective, a reminder of how crucial it was to be present for others, especially when they felt lost. She thought about the importance of showing up, of being there in those moments when people needed someone to lean on. It wasn't always easy, and sometimes it meant stepping out of her comfort zone, but she realized it was always worth it. The gratitude she had felt from the boy's family echoed in her heart. In the years that followed, she never forgot the way their faces lit up with relief and joy when they were reunited. That moment had solidified her belief that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to heal, to bring people together, and to change lives in ways that couldn't be measured. It wasn't always about grand gestures. It was about showing up, being there for others, and offering what you could when it was needed. Looking back, Melania saw the boy's story not as just a moment in time, but as a reminder of the importance of compassion. It had shaped her own journey in ways that she hadn't anticipated. She realized that kindness, empathy, and love weren't just values to hold dear. They were values to live by. As her public life continued, she vowed to make those values a central part of everything she did. She hoped that in some small way, her example would inspire others to do the same, to reach out, to help, and to be there for each other. With that sense of purpose, Melania moved forward, determined to keep spreading kindness wherever she could, and to live a life that reflected the simple yet powerful truth she had learned that day, that one small act of kindness could change everything.